Hey guys, it's Brian. So we've been off of our label for a couple months now, and there's one story in particular I've really wanted to share. Now I know a lot of bands, once they leave their labels, there's a lot of sort of anger, a lot of labels are horrible, and the music business is horrible, and this sucks, they screwed us over. And that's not how I feel, because I think that's too black and white. But this one story of this one song that I wrote was an interesting story, and at the very least I think it's a case study. And everyone's free to draw their own conclusions from it. So here we go. This is the story of one song in 19 different versions over a year and a half involving 7 3/4 writers. You'll see, there's some honorable mentions in there. And to help you guys keep track at home, I'm going to put up several counters. So right here I'm going to have the version counter, okay? Let's put up a 0. Right here we're going to have the writer counter. This is how many writers have been involved with the song up to this point. I'm number 1, so why don't we start with 1. And then over here you'll have the date counter. Okay, this is what date it is at this point in our story, so you know when this is taking place in time. Then also, I'm going to post all these different versions of the song down in the description, so you can follow along at home and pause and listen if you want. So as you can see from the counter, our story begins in April of 2010. Now in April of 2010, I got to write with a guy named Greg Wells, an amazing songwriter, amazing producer, and the two of us only had one day, but we got together and we wrote a really cool track. So this is just a track, mind you, and we didn't really have time to do melody or lyrics, and I thought, you know, I'll start working on melody and lyrics on my own time. Now Greg was also really excited about the track, so excited in fact that he sent it along to the label, even though we weren't really done, just because he wanted to share with them how cool it was. Now, this was an interesting development, and here's why. So the label heard the track without any melody or lyrics and immediately wrote back saying, this is a hit. This is a gigantic hit. Now you just gotta write words and music, melody, and all of that. So we're still on version 0 at this point. I'm going to point that out. I don't really consider it a song until you have some kind of melody and lyrics. Also though, let's up the writer count, because I was working with Greg Wells. Amazing. So I wrote a melody, I wrote some lyrics, I recorded it, a song called Lies in Stereo, version 1. And I turned it in. Long story short, they didn't think it was a hit. But they still thought they had a golden track there with a hit inside it. So they asked me to do another version. Now we were on tour for a while, but I'll slide it on up to June 2010. So I did another version. I wrote a completely new melody and lyrics having nothing to do with the original Lies in Stereo, which is a lot harder than it sounds. You may think, oh yeah, that's something new. But once you've written the song in your head, melody and lyrics that you think it should be, it can be really hard to go back and change it. That said, broke through that wall, wrote another version I really liked, a song called Drive Through. We're up to version 2 here, but they still didn't think it was a hit. So at this point, Greg suggested he might curate a couple of his friends to come and help us write. The first writer he sent it to was Shelly Peiken, very talented, another writer. She took the lyrics to Drive Through, made a couple small changes, interesting stuff. Still not a hit. But the next guy that Greg brought in was actually one of my idols. Rivers Cuomo, lead singer, songwriter of Weezer. That's right, Rivers Cuomo. Damn! One of my favorite songwriters of all time. I'm excited. So he starts fresh. We got another writer and another version. And Rivers actually gives us 2 versions, so let's add another one. The first one was called So Tired, and the second one was called Ain't Gonna Live Forever. And these are really cool. There's only a verse and a chorus of each. It was pretty surreal to me that Rivers was involved with this, and to hear his voice over the track that I had written blew my mind. I was so inspired, in fact, that I actually took some of the lyrics and melody from his version and wrote a whole new version of my own called Between 17 and Gone. So that's another version up here. I should also mention that at this point, as time is moving on, we are in July of 2010. So we turn Between 17 and Gone in. I'm super excited. Greg's super excited. Rivers is super excited. And it's not a hit, according to the label. So we go back to the drawing board. This time I get back out with Greg, and he and I write another melody. I do a version of my own from scratch. New version. It's called Runaways. And this is a totally different take. Again, new melody, new lyrics, totally different direction about the song. I cut all of this sort of dark, cynical angles that I had been approaching up to that point. I wrote a more genuine love song. So that song is called Runaways. At this point, when we turn Runaways in, there's a glimmer of hope from the label. They really love the verses. Yeah, just the verses. They don't love the chorus. So they say, write some new choruses with that verse. So the next 3 versions, Lifeline, I Will Be the One, and One Day, are all my attempts to write new choruses for that same verse. This was even harder than writing from scratch. And lo and behold, the label actually liked I Will Be the One. They just wanted some slight changes on the chorus, so I went back, rewrote those changes on the chorus, and they said, alright, actually we don't really like this, let's go back to the drawing board. At this point, another writer enters the mix, Matt Thiessen from Reliant K. On a separate writing trip in Nashville, I stopped by and hung out with him for a day. We tried to work from I Will Be the One, but didn't really get anywhere. So more time has moved on now. We're actually up to October 2010. And I'm on a trip writing with Matt Mahaffey. Matt Mahaffey produced Kaboom, so he and I decided to take a stab at writing a version. That's another writer. And we came up with something pretty cool called Better Living Through Television. I liked it a lot. Turned it into a label, wasn't a hit. But I was reinvigorated. I went home, November of 2010, I wrote a version that probably ended up being my favorite version of the song called Chicago. I'm from Chicago, I love the city, and I was on the train one day and it just sort of hit me out of the blue. New melody, new lyrics, and I really thought that I had something. So I turned it in and they said it's not a hit. And honestly, at this point, I have to admit to them that I'm kind of out of steam. I have worked hard. I hate quitting more than anything else. I'm incredibly stubborn. It's very hard for me to give up or admit defeat in any situation. But I just didn't have anything else, man. And I loved the version that I had just written, but they didn't seem to. So that was where we left it. Flash forward to May 2011. Now, we're going this chunk of time because I didn't work on the Wells track for a while. And in the meanwhile, we actually recorded the whole of Kaboom with Matt Mahaffey down in Nashville. After the rough mixes came in, the label came back and said, guys, we just don't have a hit on this record. Let me be clear, we loved the record. We basically got to put whatever we wanted on Kaboom because the label didn't think that any of the songs were hits. And in a last-ditch effort to try and make them happy, to bring them on board with this album that we're so proud of that we made, I decided to reopen the case on the Wells track. The label said they had a couple people they wanted to ask to write for it. One of them is Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne. Fountains of Wayne is my all-time favorite band, and has been for over a decade. So we've got another writer and another version. The version Adam wrote is called Can't Get To Me, and at this point I also have to be blunt. I'm too burned out to even have much of an opinion on this, but the label doesn't think it's a hit. So next up comes Claude Kelly. He's got a big resume of pop hits, and the label thinks maybe he can make one here. But after working on it for a little bit, he doesn't really even have any ideas. So let's downgrade that to an honorable mention. Why not a 0.5 on our writer scale? And at this point, I decide to put nose to the grindstone. I tell them I'm going to turn in one new version of this track every day for the next 10 days. I'm going to push through my walls. I'm going to write and write and write. Day 1 I wrote Down With Perfect. Day 2 I wrote Never Let Them Go. Day 3 I wrote Grow the Fuck Up. Day 4 I write Fight or Flight. To be honest, this isn't great for my mental health either. I'm sort of trying to leave out the touchy-feely parts about me as a songwriter, but let's just say this process has been emotionally draining. Finally, on day 6, after a year and a half, having written 18 versions of this song, I wrote a version called It's Not Me, It's You, in which I was very emotionally blunt about where I was at and my feelings on the whole subject. Now, my manager actually stopped me from submitting this one to the label because it is, well, blunt. But after writing this version, I realized it was the truest thing I had written in a long time. And this is the first time anyone not working with the band has heard this song. Actually, a lot of people working with the band have not heard this song because it's very honest. Finally, I apologized to the guys at the label, but I had to throw in the towel. I had no sauce left on the song. I had no inspiration. Now, in my personal opinion, I think our album Kaboom has lots of hits, but then again, I think every artist probably thinks that about their own album. So, this has been the I Fight Dragons case study. We got more music coming next week. I hope you saw the Crazies video from last week. And yeah, more stuff coming soon. Bye, guys.
Calm down, try to take it back to when you first found something worth believing in your heart. Pounds back when you were dreaming of the guts and glory. Time's up, smiling back at him because I've had enough. I'll wake up tomorrow and you know what? I'll be satisfied that I could write my story, even glory free. 3, 5, 8, 10, I can write this song again 18 more times. I'm not running out of rhymes. 20 more or 42 till you finally see the truth. It's not me, it's you. Easy, happy, lighted, fun.